Our fears become our limits. No one can make you feel bad if you feel good about yourself. Strong friendships are most often the result of strong intentions. What's a book that literally everyone should read? Michelle Obama's The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. I'm going to outline 4 major takeaways that I got from The Light We Carry that I think are particularly helpful to start unpacking while we're on our way building those careers, building those relationship foundations in our 20s and 30s, while allowing yourself that grace and recognizing that you're practicing these skills and it makes sense to not have all the answers. Now, I am a firm believer of the Kindle, so apologies for my lack of aesthetics over here. As a quick introduction, I'm Kimmy. I'm 29 years old, living in New York City, working in consulting, and welcome to On Our Way, a channel where we talk about navigating careers and life through the lens of being women, still on our way through it. We're not waiting until we founded a company or made partner to talk about our stories. We're starting those conversations while we're still on our way. This book was born out of COVID when we probably had a little bit too much time to learn about ourselves and reflect. Just because we're not in lockdown and now we can go out to eat doesn't mean that we should stop putting in the time to do the tough work. You know your light, you know yourself, you know your own story in an honest way. In my experience, this type of self-knowledge builds confidence, which in turn breeds calmness and an ability to maintain perspective, which leads finally to being able to connect meaningfully with others. And this to me is the bedrock of all things. One light feeds another, one strong family lends strength to more, one engaged community can ignite those around it. This is the power of the light we carry. We hear this a lot in romantic relationships, that we need to love ourselves before loving anybody else. That's 100% true, but I don't think we stop to recognize that extends to all relationships, just past romantic ones. In my own experience, when I've been unpacking my relationship with myself or not that confident, that's when my relationships all around have felt kind of like a mismatch or a little shallow to no fault of theirs. Navigating life and being on our way through those early parts of adulthood, I think it's really important to remember to take time for you. As Michelle puts it, we're on a first name basis now, when we are able to recognize our own light, we become empowered to use it. I used to call this time my single Saturdays, which now to my partner of almost half a decade, that's a little disrespectful, but the intent is the same. I take the time to do what makes me happy. And for me, that's waking up extra early on the weekend before he wakes up, go to my favorite bar class, take my dog on a nice long walk, bring a cup of coffee, get some reading done, call my mom, do all those me things. Then I feel energized to be that partner and friend once I've already taken the time for myself. To me, this boils down to being your own best friend first, while of course having others, but being able to be with yourself, fully appreciate yourself and what you have to offer. I've tried having that mindset after listening to many an empowerment podcasts and reading lovely books like this one. I found that it's allowed me over the past couple of years to really have deeper relationships with others once I had that deeper relationship and kind of appreciation with myself. I think in your 20s and 30s is the perfect time to take that time before kids, if that's on your list, or life gets more complicated, to be with yourself without distractions. In this vein, Michelle also talks about starting kind. She mentions her friend's husband, Ron, who starts every day by saying, "Hey, buddy," to himself in the mirror. She says how they laughed a little bit about this at first, but then realized this is his way of starting the day with kindness towards himself. A lot of people have trouble looking in the mirror, both literally and figuratively, but Ron isn't focused on that puffy morningness. He's focused on starting his day with being compassionate and approving of himself. She goes on to say this is what we typically try to get from others, whether it be parents, significant others, friends, and then we feel horrible when we don't get it. But truly, real growth begins with how gladly you're able to see yourself. Michelle's dad, who suffered from MS, taught her, no one can make you feel bad if you feel good about yourself. As women, we're often instructed to be pretty critical of ourselves. You could always be skinnier, but you could also always be curvier. You should be a leader, but you shouldn't be bossy. The contradictions go on and on. Go and watch America Ferrera's iconic Barbie speech and you'll get the gist. It's important to accept your whole self, no matter if you've been told that if that's the correct way to be a woman or not. Michelle explains that our differences are treasures and they're also tools. By accepting and celebrating this, we can rewrite our stories of not mattering. You only get one life, so why not spend it being a little kinder to yourself? When fear becomes paralyzing, when it robs us of our hope or our personal agency, that's when we slide into true disaster. Michelle explains how she sat with world leaders from Maya Angelou to Nelson Mandela, as well as performers and activists, and explained that she doesn't believe any would truly categorize themselves as fearless. Instead, they've learned how to be comfortably afraid, which is about learning to deal wisely with fear, finding a way to let your nerves guide you rather than stop you. Michelle notes how some fears are rational and others are irrational, using the adorable example of Sasha being terrified of a Chewbacca during a White House Halloween party. Newness and differentness, as she explains, does require extra caution. But in clinging only to what you know, you are making your world small. You are robbing yourself of chances to grow. I think it's always worth asking yourself, am I afraid because I'm in actual danger, or is it simply because I'm staring newness in the face? Our fears become our limits. Emma Grede, iconic co-founder of massive brands like Skims, Good American, the list goes on, has also said that fear has been a key component in her career growth. If I'm not a little bit scared about what I'm doing, then I'm not growing. I'm not moving forward. I think this brings in Michelle Obama's point that fear is typically more the newness factor. But without that, your world stays small. You need that newness to grow. Go forth with a spoonful of fear and return with a wagonful of competence. You learn when you push yourself and you face that newness. Every time I've introduced myself to more newness, whether that be moving 3,000 miles away to go to college or moving to New York City, starting a new job, starting this YouTube channel most recently has been when I felt like I'm living bigger and bigger and therefore a more fulfilling and enriching life. Emotions are not plans. They don't solve problems or right any wrongs. You can feel them. You will feel them inevitably, but be careful about letting them guide you. We can use fear and we should use it to some capacity as kind of that gut check, but once we let it start making decisions for us, that's when you start living smaller and smaller. Michelle explains how active she is in maintaining her friendships, even in the White House, organizing girls' trips to spend that intentional time to connect with each other. Having close friendships has also helped take the pressure off my marriage, I've found. Barack and I have never tried to be each other's everything in life, to single-handedly shoulder the entire load of care that each of us requires. I've heard this numerous times, but you can't expect one person to be your everything. It's just too much pressure. I know in the past when I've put that pressure on a significant other to be my everything, I've ended up resenting them because it's not something any one person can do, and that approach is just doomed to fail. It's exciting to get into a new relationship and spend all your time with your partner, but it's important, as we discussed earlier, to not forget to take time to spend with yourself as well as obviously your friends. Take time away from your partner to still get brunch with your friends, talk on the phone with the long distance friends. Your partner will not be able to replace your friendships, even if it feels like that for the first couple months. But it is hard to make new friends as an adult. Michelle explains that as new friends popped up in her life, she took the time to cultivate those relationships, for instance, like scheduling those weekend trips. It's intimidating to initiate a friendship with someone. You may live in the same building, maybe go to the same workout class and think, they seem pretty cool, but it would be super weird if I asked for their number and asked to get a coffee. As Michelle says though, our fears become our limits. She goes on to compare really solid best friends to those pesky little barnacles under ships and docks in the ocean. These are the people that you can truly count on. And how are you supposed to get those relationships if you don't initiate and ask if that person wants to grab a coffee after bar class, for instance? Strong friendships are most often the result of strong intentions. If you have strong social ties, research shows you are likely to live longer with less stress. She explains the power of being open. When we share our stories with fullness and honesty, we often discover that we're less alone and more connected than we might have ever believed. We start to build that important community. In the book, there's a passage about researchers who put heavy backpacks on volunteers and put them at the bottom of the mountain and asked them to predict how steep the climb would be. Those with friends estimated it to be less steep and less difficult than those who were at the base of the mountain alone. This is the power of having others alongside you as you continue on your way. We all have steep mountains in some shape or form that we're at the base at, no matter what stage in life. Wouldn't you want to do anything you could to make that feel a little bit less steep? I'm so excited to reread this book in 10, 20 years and see what sticks out to me then as I'm in different life stages. I truly think this is a book that anyone could pick up and really learn a lot from. If you've read The Light We Carry, please let me know in the comments what stuck out to you and any other helpful books or topics that we should unpack as we all continue on our way.